Camera number 45, and it's the Canonet QL17. So looking at the front of the camera, you can see it's a rangefinder camera, and it's fitted with a 45mm 1.7 lens, and presumably that's where the 17 comes from. And when I first got this camera, unfortunately it didn't operate properly. Although it wound on, the leaf shutter didn't open, so I had to take this front panel off and get access to the leaf shutter, and very carefully with some cotton buds remove some of the oily residue. Presumably there's some sort of gasket or something around here that maybe perishes and deposits itself on the shutter, but now I do have a working camera, which I'm pleased to say, so that's very satisfying when that happens. So looking at the front, going down the lens barrel, because this is where all the business seems to take place, we have our shutter speeds that go from B through to 500, and then we have a sliding switch here which is used for our flash, depending on what flash method we're using. And then we have our aperture control and auto function, and when that's put on auto, when you look through the viewfinder, there's a bar across the top which shows the needle, which moves according to the exposure, and then by changing the shutter we can change the aperture. So it is technically a aperture priority camera. Then again, you could view it as a shutter priority camera, so that's auto mode. And then of course you can take it off auto mode, and if you use a light meter or whatever meter you use, Sunny 16, you can use the camera in manual mode, which is exactly what I used it in. And then finally the focus is performed using that. There is film speeds here that we can set by pushing in and sliding the lever there. Self timer. I'm curious. Don't know. I can't seem to find any reference to this little lever here, which goes in. So maybe somebody could enlighten me on that matter. So, as I say, we're looking through the viewfinder. You get a bar across the top, which moves. The needle moves and shows. Well, it doesn't actually show anything really. It just has two red arrows, and depending on what shutter speed you set, you can read off an aperture. So it does show you the aperture reading there. So let's just put a film through the camera now. So to put a film through the camera, we slide the door open, and QL, quick load. The idea is that we just drop the cartridge in. He says, famous last words those, aren't they? Drop the cartridge in, and you just pop it there up to the red mark, and in theory the camera should do the rest. So we'll see whether that is the case. Now again, I had another issue while we've got the door open. This quick load mechanism was slightly bent. It wasn't putting enough pressure on the film, and so the film was just gliding over, or rather, sorry, the sprockets were just gliding over because it wasn't tight enough. So I had to make a little correction there, but now I'm pleased to say it does seem to work. So that in theory should have loaded the film. So let's just see if that is the case. Just check whether it has done that. Yes, no, it hasn't. Yes, it has. Yes, there we go. Let's do that again, shall we? See, it's rather temperamental, so there we go. Let's just. There we go. There we go. We can see our film's loaded on. You can see the battery compartment here, and it takes a 1.3 X, I think it's X625 battery. As I say, mine unfortunately doesn't work, so that's not an issue for me. but if you do have one that's working, well, that's the battery you need. So to take the film out, unwind it, and then take the door, open the door, there we go. And that's it. That is camera number 45, the Canonet QL17.